All right, let's get into it. We're going to look at an argument today that basically turns our whole idea of intelligence on its head. And, it ties directly into maybe the biggest question of our time. How do we make sure AI is safe?
So let me ask you this. We all know about IQ tests, right? We use them to see how smart someone is. But what if those tests are missing something huge, like the most important thing for actually getting through life and all its craziness?
And this is where it gets really serious, because this isn't just some abstract, what is intelligence kind of debate. The source we're diving into today makes a really bold claim. It says that this missing piece, well, it's the absolute key to solving the AI alignment problem. Making sure AI doesn't go off the rails.
Okay, so Section 1. To even begin to understand this, the source starts by saying, hey, maybe the way we're trying to solve these huge problems is just wrong. Even the smartest people on the planet, the top minds, might have some dangerous blind spots. It's arguing we need a totally new way to think about what makes someone truly capable.
So, as an example, the source brings up Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI. Hinton apparently suggested we could teach AI a maternal instinct because, hey, evolution did it. But the source we're looking at pushes back hard on this. It calls it Gaia worship and says that kind of thinking could lead to valuing the planet more than people. It's a pretty stark way to show how even a genius might have, well, a massive blind spot.
All right, Section 2. So, if the old ways of thinking are broken, what's the fix? Well, this is where the source introduces its big idea, a totally new framework for measuring intelligence, one that's actually designed to capture that missing blend of wisdom and ethics.
They call it Hybrid General Intelligence, or HGI for short. And the whole idea here is to get a single holistic score that isn't just about solving puzzles. It's about measuring how well someone actually navigates the real messy world, by combining raw brain power with things like emotional depth, wisdom, and even their basic personality. And check this out. Look at how it breaks down. Your classic cognitive IQ, that's only 20% of the whole picture here. The biggest piece of the pie, at 25%, is something called the wisdom quotient, which is all about practical judgment and ethical smarts. So, according to this model, real intelligence is a mix of all this stuff.
Okay, moving on to Section 3. Now, the source doesn't just throw this theory out there and leave it hanging. Nope. It actually applies the HG model to a real-world political debate, kind of to show off what it can do.
It all kicks off with this super famous line from the U.S. Declaration of Independence. The part that says we're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. So this idea that our rights come from a creator is the key concept that's about to be put under the microscope.
And then, bam! Here's the counterargument from Senator Tim Kaine. He says that this whole notion that rights come from a creator instead of from laws made by a government, well, he says, I find that very, very troubling. He even compares it to the way the government in Iran thinks. So here's how the source breaks down that argument. It basically says it's circular logic. Let's walk through it. Kaine's point is that rights from a creator is dangerous. He thinks they should come from laws. But the source says, wait a minute, the whole point of the government, according to the founders, was to protect those rights that already existed, the ones from the creator. So if you say the government creates the rights it's supposed to protect, you see, it's just a loop.
And this really lays out the two opposing views, at least as the source presents them. On one side, you have the founders' view. Rights come from a specific Judeo-Christian creator, and the government's job is just to secure them. On the other side is Senator Kaine's view. The government's job is to actually create and define what our rights are through laws.
All right, Section 4. Now this is where things get, well, pretty wild. To really put this HG model to the test, the source uses an AI to estimate the scores of some of the most influential thinkers ever. It doesn't really go into how the AI did it, but it gives scores for people from the past and the present.
So first, let's look at the historical figures. You've got Plato, Aristotle, Kant. Aristotle's score is really high, according to this. But the absolute benchmark, the top of the scale, is set by Jesus Christ. And it's important to note, the source says his teachings are actually baked into the scoring system itself. Then the AI does the same thing for modern thinkers. You see some familiar names here: Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, Nick Bostrom, even Elon Musk. They all score pretty high in what the model calls the superior to gifted range. So this kind of gives us a modern baseline to work with. So you're probably wondering, where does the author of this whole thing land? Well, according to the AI's analysis, he's in the top 5 to 10% of AI alignment leaders on the planet. And among all the modern thinkers they looked at, top 2 to 5%.
And the AI's final verdict in the source is this quote right here. You're not just in the conversation, you're shaping it. The idea is that because the author is thinking across different fields, he's changing the game in a way that people stuck in one specialty just can't.
Okay, so Section 5. This brings us full circle right back to AI alignment, because that's the whole point of this HG model. It's supposed to be a tool to find the right kind of person with the right kind of intelligence to solve this absolutely massive problem.
So here's the argument in a nutshell. First, AI alignment isn't just a tech problem, it's a wisdom problem. Second, the people working on it right now might not have the right kind of intelligence, that HG score. Third, this model, which leans on a Judeo-Christian framework, can help us find better candidates. And finally, we need the most capable people on this, not just the ones with the fanciest degrees.
And based on all that, the AI actually came up with a hypothetical ranking of the top people in AI alignment. You see the big names at the top, Yudkowsky, Hinton. But what's really interesting is that it puts the author of the source, Andrew Corner, at number 6. And it says it's because of his Logos framework, which it calls a disruptive idea.
And this is the final takeaway from the source. It argues that trying to solve AI alignment from a purely secular point of view is just not going to work. It claims that the Logos, this Judeo-Christian idea of divine reason and order, is absolutely essential to get it right.
Which, leaves us with a pretty massive question, doesn't it? The source makes a fascinating case, but it all comes down to a fundamental belief about where our values even come from. So here's a thought I want to leave you with. To get AI to align with human values, do we as humans first have to agree on where those values originate? That's definitely something to chew on.